A Hidden Duke's Heart, London, 1857. Victoria Darlington's breath clouded in the frigid January air as she hurried down the narrow cobblestone street, clutching her worn woolen shawl tightly around her shoulders. The day's wages from Mrs. Fairchild's millinery shop weighed meagre in her pocket, not enough to pay both the month's rent and purchase medicine for her ailing father. A horse-drawn carriage thundered past, spraying muddy slush onto the hem of her only decent dress. Victoria bit back tears of frustration. 3 years ago, she would have been riding in such a carriage, not dodging its wake. But her father's failed investments and subsequent illness had plummeted them from comfortable respectability to desperate genteel poverty. Miss Darlington. Mrs. Hatcher, her landlady, called from the doorway of their modest lodging house. A letter arrived for you this afternoon. Victoria accepted the envelope, noting the fine quality of the paper and the elegant script. Breaking the seal, she read, Miss Darlington, your reputation as a skilled nurse has come to my attention. I write on behalf of a gentleman who requires immediate care at his country estate. The position offers £30 per month, with room and board provided. A carriage will await your decision tomorrow at noon. Respectfully Mr. Howard Briggs, solicitor. Victoria's hand trembled. £30 per month would save them from ruin. But who was this mysterious invalid? And how had he learned of her nursing skills, which she had only employed for her father and a few neighbours? Good news, I hope? Mrs. Hatcher inquired. Perhaps the answer to my prayers, Victoria replied cautiously, though her mind raced with questions. The following day, a polished black carriage bearing no family crest waited outside precisely at noon. The driver, stoic and uniformed, offered no information beyond, to Thornfield Hall, Miss. As London's crowded streets gave way to the verdant countryside, Victoria's anxieties multiplied. What if this mysterious benefactor had less honourable intentions? She was, after all, a young woman of 23, travelling alone to an unknown destination. After several hours, they passed through ornate iron gates and down a long, tree-lined drive. Thornfield Hall emerged from the mist, a magnificent stone mansion with dozens of windows glinting in the late afternoon sun. Victoria's breath caught. This was no ordinary gentleman's residence, but the estate of someone with considerable wealth. An austere housekeeper received her at the entrance. Miss Darlington, I presume. I am Mrs. Porter. His Grace has been expecting you. His Grace? Victoria echoed, suddenly aware of her travel-worn appearance. You were not informed. Mrs. Porter raised an eyebrow. You have been engaged to nurse His Grace, the Duke of Thornfield. Victoria nearly stumbled. A duke? She had expected perhaps a merchant or retired military officer, not one of England's highest-ranking noblemen. His Grace suffered injuries in a hunting accident several weeks ago, Mrs. Porter continued as they ascended a grand staircase. The physicians have done what they can, but he requires ongoing care. I must warn you, he is not himself. The accident has altered his temperament considerably. They stop before an imposing oak door. His Grace insists on privacy. You will be the only staff member permitted in his chambers, aside from myself. Whatever you see or hear within remains strictly confidential. With that cryptic warning, Mrs. Porter knocked twice and opened the door. The spacious bedchamber lay in near darkness, heavy velvet curtains drawn against the late afternoon light. A massive four-poster bed dominated the room, and from it came a voice, low, harsh, and unmistakably commanding. Is that the nurse? Bring her here. Victoria approached cautiously. As her eyes adjusted to the dim light, she discerned the figure of a man propped against several pillows. His features remained obscured in shadow. Your Grace, I am Victoria Darlington. Miss Darlington. His voice softened slightly. You come highly recommended, though I confess I know little of your qualifications. I have nursed my father through several illnesses, Your Grace, and assisted our neighbourhood physician with various patients. A dry laugh erupted from the shadows. So not a trained nurse at all. How providential. Victoria bristled at his tone. I assure you, Your Grace, while I lack formal training, I possess practical experience and a sincere desire to aid your recovery. Sincerity. He nearly spat the word. A rare commodity indeed. Very well, Miss Darlington. We shall see if your sincerity withstands the test of time. Mrs. Porter will show you to your quarters. You begin your duties tomorrow at dawn. As Victoria curtsied and turned to leave, his voice halted her. One condition, Miss Darlington. You will not attempt to draw back the curtains or bring additional light into this room. Is that understood? Yes, Your Grace, she replied, curiosity piqued by this strange requirement. Her chamber, while modest compared to the grandeur of the rest of the house, surpassed any accommodation she had known since her family's financial collapse. A cheerful fire warmed the room, and the bed featured the softest linen she had ever touched. After unpacking her meager belongings, Victoria penned a letter to her father, enclosing half of the advance payment she had received and assuring him of her safety. As she sealed the envelope, a knock at her door revealed a maid bearing a supper tray. The Duke's personal physician arrives tomorrow morning, miss, the young woman informed her. He's to brief you on His Grace's condition. Thank you. May I ask how long His Grace has been unwell? The maid's expression grew guarded. Going on 2 months now, miss. Not since the accident. What sort of accident was it? I couldn't say, miss. None of us knows the particulars. Only that he returned grievously injured and hasn't been seen by anyone except Mrs. Porter and Dr. Carmichael since. She hesitated. There are rumors among the staff, of course. What rumors? That his face was. The maid lowered her voice. Disfigured, miss. That's why he keeps his rooms dark and won't see visitors. Even turned away his own mother, the Dowager Duchess, when she called last week. Victoria frowned. Surely if that were the case, Dr. Carmichael would have mentioned it in considering my qualifications. Perhaps, the maid replied, though her expression suggested otherwise. Good night, miss. Sleep eluded Victoria that night as she pondered the mysterious Duke. Why would a man of his standing seek a nurse with her limited experience? And why the insistence on darkness? The following morning, Victoria met Dr. Carmichael, a distinguished gentleman with silver-streaked hair and shrewd eyes that assessed her carefully. His Grace suffered multiple injuries, he explained as they walked the corridor toward the Duke's chambers. 2 broken ribs, a fractured femur, and various contusions. These are healing well enough. More concerning is the head injury, which has affected his vision. Bright light causes him considerable pain. I see, Victoria replied, relieved there was a medical explanation for the darkened room. What treatments have you prescribed? Rest, primarily. The medicines I've left detailed instructions for. But his physical recovery is progressing more rapidly than his emotional state. Dr. Carmichael paused. Before the accident, the Duke of Thornfield was known for his good humor and generosity. Now he is bitter, withdrawn. This is not uncommon following trauma, but his refusal to see anyone hinders his recovery. You believe companionship would help? I believe, Miss Darlington, that someone unconnected to his previous life might draw him out of his shell. Someone who sees him as he is now, not as he was before. With these words echoing in her mind, Victoria entered the Duke's chambers. Morning light filtered faintly through a gap in the curtains, allowing her a better glimpse of her patient than the previous evening. The Duke of Thornfield appeared to be in his early 30s, with a strong jaw and classical features. A bandage wrapped around his forehead and right eye, while several days' growth of beard darkened his face. He sat propped in bed, a book open on his lap, though he wasn't reading it. Good morning, Your Grace, Victoria said softly. His head turned sharply toward her voice. Miss Darlington. Prompt, at least. Dr. Carmichael has briefed me on your condition and the treatments required. She moved to his bedside table, arranging the medicines. Would you prefer to take your tonic now or after breakfast? I've no appetite for either. Victoria smiled, though he couldn't see it. Nevertheless, both are necessary for your recovery. Recovery? He laughed bitterly. To what purpose, Miss Darlington? So I may return to the tedious obligations of my station? The endless parade of fortune hunters and their ambitious mothers. Perhaps simply for the pleasure of feeling well again, she suggested. Of riding across your beautiful grounds or enjoying the library I glimpsed downstairs. Something in her tone must have caught his attention, for he turned his face more fully toward her. You approve of my library, then? From what little I saw, it appears magnificent. I've always found solace in books. As have I. A moment of silence fell between them before he added gruffly, the tonic first, then whatever bland porridge Mrs. Porter has instructed the cook to prepare. Over the following days, Victoria established a routine of care for the Duke, administering his medicines, changing his bandages, reading to him from various volumes when his head pained him too much to read himself. Though often irascible, he displayed flashes of the wit and intelligence that must have characterized him before his accident. A week into her employment, Victoria entered his chambers to find him attempting to stand unaided, leaning heavily on a cane. Your Grace, she exclaimed, rushing to his side. Dr. Carmichael hasn't authorized you to walk without assistance. I answer to no man's authority in my own home, Miss Darlington, he growled, though he permitted her to steady him. I'm tired of this confinement. Then let me help you to that chair by the window, she suggested. The exercise will do you good, but there's no sense risking a fall that would extend your recovery. He allowed her to guide him, his large hand warm against her arm. As they moved slowly across the room, Victoria became acutely aware of his physical presence, tall and solid despite his weakened state, the scent of sandalwood and clean linen emanating from him. You may open the curtains a fraction, he said once settled. I find I can tolerate some light today. Victoria drew back the heavy fabric just enough to illuminate the room without allowing direct sunlight to fall on him. In the improved light, she studied his face more carefully. The visible portion was undeniably handsome, strong brow, straight nose, firm mouth currently set in a grim line. What lay beneath the bandage remained a mystery. Tell me, Miss Darlington, he said suddenly, what circumstances led a young woman of obviously gentle breeding to accept employment as a nurse to a reclusive invalid? Victoria stiffened. How did you, your speech, your manners? You were not raised to service. She considered deflecting his question but opted for honesty. My father was a merchant. Moderately successful until 3 years ago, when several investments failed. His health broke under the strain, leaving me to provide for us both. And your mother? Died when I was 12. The Duke nodded slowly. My condolences. Both for your mother and your reduced circumstances. They have taught me valuable lessons, Victoria replied. About the fragility of fortune and the true nature of friendship. Indeed. His mouth twisted wryly. Amazing how quickly one circle of dear friends diminishes when one's circumstances change. You speak from experience, Your Grace. He laughed harshly. Hardly. The Duke of Thornfield could commit any manner of sins and still find himself welcomed in the finest homes. Such is the power of title and wealth. Then you've never known true friendship, Victoria observed quietly. His head turned sharply toward her. You presume much, Miss Darlington. Forgive me, Your Grace. I spoke out of turn. A heavy silence fell between them, broken only when the Duke said, perhaps you're right. The admission hung in the air for a moment before he added, I should like to rest now. That evening, Victoria sat with Mrs. Porter in the housekeeper's parlor, drinking tea and learning more about the household she had joined. His Grace has owned Thornfield Hall for only 3 years, Mrs. Porter explained. Inherited it from his uncle, the previous Duke. Before that, he lived primarily in London or at the family's main estate in Derbyshire. Does he have family? Victoria inquired. Only the Dowager Duchess, his mother, and a younger sister, Lady Eleanor. Both have requested to visit, but His Grace refuses to see them. Mrs. Porter sighed. It pains them greatly, but he is most insistent. Because of his injuries. The housekeeper's expression grew troubled. Partly, perhaps. But there may be other reasons. Before the accident, rumours circulated that His Grace was finally considering marriage. Lady Caroline Pembroke was the favoured candidate, beautiful, well-connected, with a substantial dowry. What happened? No announcement was ever made. And when His Grace returned injured from his hunting trip, Lady Caroline and her family were conspicuously silent. No inquiries after his health, no visits attempted. Mrs. Porter's mouth tightened. Most curious, wouldn't you say? Victoria agreed it was strange, but her thoughts were interrupted by the butler's appearance at the door. Miss Darlington, His Grace requests your presence immediately. Victoria found the Duke pacing his darkened room, agitation evident in every line of his body. Your Grace? Are you in pain? Read this, he commanded, thrusting a newspaper toward her. Page 3, the Society column. Victoria lit an additional lamp and read aloud, Society circles buzz with news of Lady Caroline Pembroke's engagement to Viscount Hatherton. The announcement comes as a surprise to many who believed the beautiful heiress had set her sights on a grander prize. One can only speculate what caused her attentions to shift so dramatically. She looked up to find the Duke standing rigidly by the fireplace. Do you understand now, Miss Darlington? He asked, voice tight with controlled emotion. Why I refuse visitors? Why I remain sequestered in darkness? I'm afraid I don't, Your Grace. Lady Caroline Pembroke was to be my Duchess, he said bitterly. Until my accident rendered me unsuitable. She couldn't bear the thought of a husband with a ruined face, despite all my other attributes. Victoria's heart constricted. Your face is injured, yes, but surely with time will not restore what was lost, he thundered, then immediately grimaced in pain at his own outburst. More quietly, he continued, the physicians were quite clear. The scars will remain. And so Lady Caroline found herself a more aesthetically pleasing Viscount. Victoria set down the newspaper. Then she is a fool, Your Grace. His head snapped up. What did you say? Any woman who would abandon a man she claimed to love because of physical scars is not worthy of the title of Duchess. Victoria spoke firmly, surprising herself with her boldness. She reveals not your deficiencies, but her own. For a long moment, the Duke said nothing, his breathing the only sound in the room. Finally, he murmured, you have an unusual way of viewing matters, Miss Darlington. I merely speak the truth as I see it, Your Grace. Ethan. I beg your pardon. My name is Ethan. Ethan Belgrave. He moved toward her, stepping into the circle of lamplight for the first time. If you're to continue berating me for self-pity, you might as well use my Christian name. Victoria caught her breath as she saw his face fully. The bandage covered his right eye and temple, but the rest of his features were precisely as she'd glimpsed before, strong, masculine, handsome even in distress. His left eye, a startling shade of blue, regarded her intently. I didn't mean to berate you, Ethan, she said softly. Only to suggest that perhaps Lady Caroline's defection is no great loss. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You are a most unconventional nurse, Victoria. The sound of her name on his lips sent an unexpected warmth through her. So I've been told. The following weeks brought gradual but significant changes. Ethan began taking short walks through the house on Victoria's arm, eventually venturing into the library where they spent hours discussing literature and history. His bandages were reduced, revealing a jagged scar that ran from his right temple down to his cheekbone. His eye had been saved, though the vision in it remained blurred. Victoria found herself increasingly drawn to the complex man beneath the ducal title. His intelligence challenged her, his dry humor made her laugh, his vulnerability when he removed the last of his bandages touched something deep within her heart. For his part, Ethan seemed to soften in her presence. The bitter edge to his words diminished, replaced by genuine interest in her opinions and experiences. He insisted she borrow freely from his library and commissioned new gowns for her, claiming her position as his nurse demanded appropriate attire. You needn't spend your money on me, Victoria protested when the dressmaker arrived for measurements. It pleases me to do so, he replied simply. Besides, I'm merely being practical. Your current wardrobe is hardly suited to the coming spring weather. Victoria knew she should refuse such personal gifts, but the warmth in his gaze weakened her resolve. And if her heart quickened when his hand lingered on hers as he helped her from a chair, or when their fingers brushed while sharing a book, she attributed it to the natural intimacy that develops between patient and caregiver. One evening in late March, as rain lashed against the windows, Ethan requested Victoria read to him from a volume of poetry. She selected Tennyson's Ulysses, her voice rising and falling with the rhythm of the verse. Though the much is taken, much abides, and though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, we are. Victoria paused, struck by how the words mirrored Ethan's situation. Continue, he urged softly from his seat by the fire. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. She closed the book. It's beautiful. Indeed. Ethan's gaze remained fixed on her face. Victoria, I've received a letter from my mother. She insists on visiting next week, and I've finally acquiesced. That's wonderful, Victoria replied sincerely. Family support will aid your recovery. Perhaps. He looked troubled. But her visit raises questions about propriety. I don't understand. A young, unmarried woman residing alone with a bachelor, even as his nurse, will raise eyebrows. Particularly when that bachelor is a duke. Victoria felt her cheeks warm. I hadn't considered. Should I return to London temporarily? No. His response came swiftly, almost vehemently. More calmly, he added, that is, I still require your care. But perhaps we should present you as a paid companion rather than a nurse. It would appear more conventional. Of course, Victoria agreed, though the distinction seemed minimal to her. Whatever you think best. The Dowager Duchess of Thornfield arrived the following Tuesday, an elegant woman with silver-streaked dark hair and Ethan's piercing blue eyes. She embraced her son tearfully, examining his scarred face with a mother's loving scrutiny. My darling boy, she murmured. I've been frantic with worry. Unnecessarily so, mother, as you can see. Ethan's voice carried forced lightness. Miss Darlington has been an excellent nurse, or rather, companion. The Duchess turned her assessing gaze on Victoria. Miss Darlington. I understand we have you to thank for my son's improved condition. Victoria curtsied. His Grace has done the difficult work of recovery himself, Your Grace. I merely provided encouragement. The Duchess's expression remained neutral, though Victoria detected skepticism in her tone. How fortunate that someone with your qualifications was available precisely when needed. Throughout dinner, Victoria endured the Duchess's subtle inquiries into her background, family connections, and circumstances. Though never openly rude, the older woman's questions carried an undercurrent of suspicion that left Victoria increasingly uncomfortable. Later, as Victoria prepared to retire for the evening, the Duchess requested a private word in the morning room. Miss Darlington, she began without preamble, I shall be direct. What are your intentions toward my son? Victoria blinked in surprise. Intentions, Your Grace? I'm merely his nurse, his companion. Indeed. The Duchess arched an elegant eyebrow. A young, unmarried woman of limited means, living under the same roof as one of England's wealthiest bachelors. You must understand my concern. Heat flooded Victoria's cheeks. I assure you, my relationship with the Duke is entirely professional. Perhaps on your side. The Duchess studied her carefully. But my son is vulnerable. His injury, his rejection by Lady Caroline, he may misinterpret kindness for deeper sentiment. I would never take advantage, not intentionally, perhaps. The Duchess softened slightly. You seem a decent young woman, Miss Darlington. But Ethan is a duke. His choice of bride must reflect his position. Surely you understand that a permanent connection between you would be impossible. Victoria felt as though she'd been struck. Not because the Duchess's words were unexpected, they merely stated the obvious social reality, but because they forced her to confront feelings she had been carefully avoiding acknowledging. "I understand perfectly, Your Grace," she replied, willing her voice to remain steady. "If you'll excuse me, it's been a long day." That night, Victoria lay awake, the Duchess's words echoing in her mind. Had she developed feelings for Ethan that went beyond the bounds of her position? And worse, had he noticed? She resolved to maintain stricter professional distance going forward. The Duchess departed after a 3-day visit, leaving behind an atmosphere of strained formality. Victoria found herself creating reasons to spend less time with Ethan, claiming household duties or correspondence that required her attention. She no longer read to him in the evenings, instead providing him with a selection of books from which to choose for himself. Ethan noticed the change immediately. "Have I offended you in some way?" he asked one afternoon as Victoria efficiently, but distantly, arranged his medicines. "Not at all, Your Grace." "We're back to the Your Grace now." His voice carried a hint of hurt. "What happened to Ethan?" Victoria kept her eyes on her task. "It seems more appropriate, given your improved condition and the reduced need for nursing care." "I see." He watched her movements intently. "Did my mother say something to upset you?" The Dowager Duchess was perfectly gracious, Victoria replied truthfully, if incompletely. "Victoria." Ethan's tone compelled her to meet his gaze. "Please don't withdraw your friendship. These past weeks, your companionship has meant more to me than I can express." The sincere emotion in his eyes nearly undid her resolve. "Your Grace, Ethan," he corrected gently. "Ethan," she conceded. "I'm pleased to have helped your recovery. But as you grow stronger, you'll soon resume your normal activities and social obligations. My presence will become unnecessary. And if I wish you to stay regardless..." Victoria's heart lurched painfully. "That would be unwise." "Because of the gossip?" "I care nothing for that." "You should," she insisted. "You are a duke. Your reputation can withstand far worse than employing a companion." He reached for her hand. "Victoria, please. Tell me what troubles you." She withdrew her hand carefully. "Nothing troubles me. I simply think we should maintain appropriate boundaries." Ethan's expression hardened. "My mother suggested this, didn't she? Warned you against developing attachment to your patient." Victoria's silence confirmed his suspicion. "And you agreed with her assessment," he concluded bitterly. "That a duke should not form connections outside his circle." "It's not a matter of agreement but of reality," Victoria replied. "Surely you understand that." "What I understand," Ethan said slowly, "is that I valued your company precisely because you saw beyond my title to the man beneath. Apparently, I was mistaken." The hurt in his voice cut Victoria deeply, but she maintained her composure. "If you'll excuse me, Your Grace, I should check with Mrs. Porter about dinner arrangements." She fled before he could respond, her eyes burning with unshed tears. The following week passed in excruciating politeness. Victoria performed her duties efficiently while Ethan retreated behind a wall of ducal formality. The easy companionship they had shared evaporated, replaced by stilted conversation and lengthy silences. On Friday morning, Victoria received a letter from her father that shattered her fragile emotional equilibrium. His health had taken a turn for the worse, and the physician recommended treatment at a specialized hospital in Switzerland, treatment they could not possibly afford. Victoria was still absorbing this news when Ethan's solicitor, Mr. Briggs, arrived unexpectedly. After a private meeting with the Duke, he requested Victoria's presence in the library. "Miss Darlington," Mr. Briggs began, "His Grace has instructed me to arrange for your father's medical treatment in Switzerland. All expenses will be covered, including suitable accommodations for both of you during his recovery." Victoria stared in shock. "I don't understand." "It's quite simple," Ethan said from his position by the window. "Your father requires specialized care. I have the means to provide it. But how did you know? Your letter was clearly distressing. I took the liberty of inquiring what it contained. At Victoria's expression of outrage, he added, your maid is rather easily persuaded to share information. You had no right, Victoria began, but Mr. Briggs interjected smoothly. The arrangements are already in motion, Miss Darlington. Your father will be transported to Switzerland next week, with accommodations prepared for your arrival shortly thereafter. Victoria looked between the two men, emotions warring within her. Gratitude for her father's care collided with indignation at the high-handed manner in which it had been arranged. May I speak with His Grace privately? She asked Mr. Briggs, who nodded and excused himself. Once alone with Ethan, Victoria struggled to organize her thoughts. I appreciate your generosity toward my father, but I cannot accept charity of this magnitude. It isn't charity, Ethan replied, still gazing out the window rather than at her. Consider it payment for services rendered. Your nursing has been exemplary. No nursing is worth such a sum. He turned then, his expression unreadable. Then consider it a gift from a friend. Friends don't make life-altering decisions for each other without consultation, Victoria pointed out, though her anger was fading in the face of his obvious good intentions. Perhaps not, he conceded. But I knew you would refuse if asked directly. Your pride rivals my own. Victoria couldn't help the small smile that tugged at her lips. That's quite an accusation, coming from you. A matching smile briefly lit his features before fading. Victoria, please allow me to do this for your father. Not out of charity or obligation, but because it would give me genuine pleasure to ease your burden. Put that way, how could she refuse? Thank you, she said simply. I don't know how I'll ever repay such kindness. No repayment is necessary or expected. Ethan hesitated. Though I admit I had hoped, but no matter. What did you hope? He shook his head. Nothing of importance. You should begin preparations for your journey. Mr. Briggs will provide all the necessary details. Victoria sensed she was being dismissed, but couldn't shake the feeling that something vital had been left unsaid. That evening, a package arrived in her room, a beautiful leather-bound volume of Tennyson's complete works. Inside, a note in Ethan's handwriting read simply, * to remind you of our evenings in the library. Safe travels. Victoria traced her fingers over the elegant script, tears blurring her vision. In 2 days, she would leave Thornfield Hall, likely never to return. The thought brought an unexpected ache to her chest. The morning of her departure dawned clear and bright. Victoria had said her goodbyes to the staff the previous evening, receiving warm wishes and promises to care well for His Grace in her absence. Only her farewell to Ethan remained. She found him in the library, standing before the window that overlooked the gardens, his tall figure silhouetted against the morning light. He turned at her entrance, his face carefully composed. Your carriage is ready, he said. Mr. Briggs will escort you to Dover and ensure you have everything needed for the crossing. Thank you. Victoria hesitated, then added, for everything. My father's care, your kindness to me, I shall never forget it. Nor I your companionship during my recovery. Ethan's voice remained formal, though something flickered in his eyes. I wish you and your father well, Victoria. She curtsied, preparing to leave, but Ethan suddenly stepped forward and caught her hand. Must you go? The words seemed torn from him. Victoria looked up in surprise. My father needs me. And after he recovers. Ethan's grip on her hand tightened. Would you consider returning to Thornfield? Hope flared briefly in Victoria's chest before reality extinguished it. As your nurse? Your companion? Your Grace, we both know such an arrangement cannot continue indefinitely. Society would never accept it. Damn society, he growled. I'm asking if you would return as my Duchess. Victoria stared at him, certain she had misheard. Your what? My Duchess. My wife. Ethan's expression softened as he raised her hand to his lips. I love you, Victoria Darlington, I think I have since you first berated me for my self-pity. Your kindness, your intelligence, your ability to see the man behind the title and the scars, you've healed more than my physical wounds. But your mother said, my mother wants my happiness above all, he interrupted. She questioned your intentions, yes, but she also observed how you've transformed me. She gave her blessing before she left. She did. Victoria whispered, scarcely daring to believe. She did. Ethan released her hand only to cup her face gently. I planned to court you properly upon your return, but I find I cannot bear to let you leave without knowing if there's hope for us. Tell me, Victoria, could you love a scarred duke who has the most inconvenient habit of arranging matters without consultation? Joy bubbled up within her as Victoria placed her hands on his chest. I already do love him, despite his high-handed ways. Perhaps even because of them. Ethan's smile transformed his face, the scar disappearing in the radiance of his happiness. Then marry me. Not because I'm a duke or because I can provide for your father, but because we suit each other. Because we challenge each other. Because life is richer when we share it. Yes, Victoria answered simply. Though my father's treatment must come first. Of course. Ethan pulled her gently into his arms. I shall join you in Switzerland once my physicians give their approval for travel. We can be married there, with your father present. As Ethan lowered his lips to hers in a tender first kiss, Victoria marveled at the strange twist of fate that had brought her to Thornfield Hall. She had come to nurse an ailing stranger, never imagining he would heal the wounds in her own heart and offer her a future brighter than any she could have dreamed. 6 months later, the London Society papers announced, His Grace, the Duke of Thornfield, has taken as his Duchess the former Miss Victoria Darlington in a private ceremony in Geneva. The new Duchess, daughter of respected merchant Mr. James Darlington, is said to have nursed His Grace back to health following his hunting accident last winter. Sources close to the family report that the Dowager Duchess is delighted with her son's choice, declaring the new Duchess exactly what Thornfield needs, intelligence and heart in equal measure. The couple will return to England next month, where a reception will be held at Thornfield Hall. The papers failed to mention that the Duke no longer kept his chambers in darkness, that he laughed freely and often, or that he looked at his Duchess as though she were the sun itself. These were private treasures, known only to those who witnessed the remarkable love story of the scarred Duke and the nurse who had seen beyond his wounds to the heart beneath.